Hello, and welcome to Secure Talk, a podcast where we explore the critical world of information security innovation and compliance. I'm your host, Justin Beals, founder and CEO of StrikeGraph. Together with our expert guests, we'll provide you tools and tips to help your business thrive in the rapidly evolving cybersecurity environment. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Secure Talk. I'm your host, Justin Beals. Throughout 2025, we've had the privilege of speaking with some of the world's leading voices on cybersecurity, technology ethics, cognitive science, and the future of human society. We've traveled from German municipalities struggling with ransomware attacks to Harvard and MIT exploring what it means to be human in a digital age, to the front lines of AI development, where security frameworks built for deterministic systems are colliding with probabilistic intelligence. And we've really listened to these conversations and found 7 critical patterns have emerged. Not predictions about the future, but patterns already in motion that we're choosing to either amplify or interrupt. Now, these aren't abstract concepts. They're about whether democracy survives when we can't agree on basic facts, whether our children grow up in communities held together by trust or torn apart by algorithms optimized for outrage, whether we deploy AI systems we fundamentally don't understand at a scale that could make recovery impossible. The question leading into 2026 isn't whether we face unprecedented challenges. We do. The question is whether we're brave enough to recognize that cybersecurity has never been a technical problem. It's always been a human one. Today, we're going back through our 2025 conversations to extract the most critical insights from our guests, their stellar moments, the revelations that made us stop and think. This is the story of our greatest vulnerabilities and our most powerful tools for building a more secure future together. Let's start with the most urgent message from 2025. We're not seeing reality. We're seeing a manufactured extremism, and the data makes this undeniable. Dr. Claire Robinson is a postdoctoral researcher at New York University who studies how social media algorithms shape our perception of political reality. Her research revealed something that should terrify anyone who cares about an active democracy.
It's only the people who feel the strongest or who have something to they have a bone to pick, right? That they're the people who are going to go in and comment. And so again, it's kind of still, even just what we're seeing is being inflated by the most active users. And it's a really small proportion. I think Pew found 97% of political content is posted by only the top 10% most active users on Twitter.
Yeah.
And if you invert that, that means that 90% of Twitter users' opinions are being represented by 3% of tweets.
We've transformed from selling newspapers with one dramatic headline to selling attention where every piece of content competes in a gladiatorial arena for your eyeballs. And what wins? Outrage, conflict, extremism.
If you think about kind of the unit of the product, right? They maybe had something on the front page that was negative so that you would buy the paper. But then you owned the paper. Then the rest of it doesn't have to be as attention grabbing, right? But now it's the unit of product has changed, and now it's clicks, it's time on page, right? So that kind of forces people, I think, to make everything bleed, to extend the metaphor.
Every single post must bleed. Our human forebears understood what we're rediscovering at massive computational scale. Division is profitable for those who control the channels of information. And now we've given them algorithms that can optimize for division with inhuman efficiency. But here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Greg Epstein is the humanist chaplain at Harvard and MIT. He spent 21 years in confidential conversations with the people building these systems. And what he's observed should give us all pause.
one of the general impressions that I have of like a lot of the people who've gone into, that company in particular, companies like it, and with real notable exceptions. It's like there were a lot of people that went into that field of creating social media for billions of dollars that just, they themselves really struggled to relate to other human beings. They themselves really struggle to feel any kind of compassion or warm feeling, at the end of the day, in the sort of peaceful quiet of their own room or their own home. Any sort of love for themselves and therefore for most other people.
The architects of our connection technologies are often themselves deeply disconnected. They've built systems that replicate their own isolation at scale.
The ability and dedication that people have to like sitting with one another and really talking about how you feel, what your life is like, what you want your life to be like, what you fear, what you are, what you're angry about, what you're sad about, what brings you joy, what you're wondrous about, like these are all like, we don't have many of these conversations anymore. And so instead, you have these very like algorithmic kinds of conversations.
Greg's observation cuts to the core. We've replaced genuine human conversation with algorithmic exchanges. And as we have more digital interactions, we're having fewer human ones. We don't even know what we're missing anymore. And this is our first lesson. Fragmented societies are inherently less secure. You can't secure what you can't trust. And you can't trust communities that have been deliberately divided for profit. So why did this happen? How did we go from the early internet's promise of global connection to algorithmic systems that drive us apart? Greg Epstein has a theory, and it's uncomfortable because it implicates all of us. When we only worship winning, we lose sight of the actual value of competition, which is that we have a foundation, like a cultural foundation to work from. And then competition is there to allow us to improve everyone's lives, like together, not only one. Like we celebrate the great athlete that has struggled hard and find inspiration in it, especially when they're gracious, at the achievement that community lifted them there. But the tech entrepreneur attitude of I built this is just wrong.
The best that they could do in many cases is just this feeling of like, what I can do is win. I know how to win. As a kid, I was taught to win and I did it. And sometimes I didn't do it, but in other times, like most often when it was like nerdy contexts, I figured out how to win things. And that at least gave me a kind of simulacrum of feeling good. It gave me the feeling of being respected, perhaps, or valued by my parents, my teachers, my peers, whatever, like, hey, there goes a winner. And so I just want to replicate that feeling again and again throughout my life, because I don't have any confidence that just warmth and self-sacrifice and loving vulnerably, is going to get me anywhere. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to create companies that like maybe again provide this sort of simulacrum of human connection.
The tech industry has replaced building community with dominating markets, and in the process making what we desire, human interaction, a simulacrum, a hollow imitation. Companies that look like they're connecting people are actually creating immense power for their founders. More attention, more being in control, and more money. And Greg points out something crucial. We all converted to this religion.
We converted to their religion. And so now we're stuck in this place where even though it's not a religion that many of us feel particularly comfortable with being believers in, we're in this place where when you speak about that religion, we now have to say we, including ourselves, right?
Yeah. I know I do. I participate in it. I built a venture-backed company. We're all swimming in this pool together. And that makes the second lesson even more critical. Technology won't save us from ourselves. We can't rely on tech companies who prioritize profit, or Congress, which has yet to pass a single bill limiting widespread data collection. If we want a safer, more ethical-driven world, we're going to have to build it ourselves from the ground up. But here's the hope. We've done this before. Jesse Gilbert reminded us of something extraordinary during our data kindness conversation.
Years ago, the idea that everywhere you went, or if you went to someone's home or to a restaurant, that you would be asked if you had a food allergy would have been unimaginable. This wasn't a shared value that we had together. But then also, how did that trickle into our individual behaviors? How did that become something that was so widely adopted that this is now a standard question that we might ask someone who's a dinner guest?
Think about that transformation. In just 20 years, asking about food allergies went from non-existent to standard practice. No federal mandate required it. No law compelled it. It happened organically.
There's a kind of acknowledgement and adoption of a core value, which is this is a vulnerability that others have. I may know someone who has, some of my loved ones may have it. And I've internalized that not only as a kind of, actuarial, action that I might take to limit my exposure, but actually as an expression of care.
An expression of care. That's the key. The shift happened because we had reliable evidence of a widespread problem, public discussion about solutions, and enough people willing to change their behavior. The concept spread organically until it became a social norm. Jesse outlined the 3 legs of this table.
There's a regulatory sort of societal top-down approach. There's the individual level, and then there's the data that supports it. We need to move away from that as a purely intellectual exercise, and we need to think about how we're going to integrate that information into a kind of, we could call it a moral stance, or we could call it a kind of, ethos that is shared among people.
This is our 3rd lesson. Real change happens through grassroots cultural shifts. The small acts matter. Unplugging smart devices when guest visits, consulting family before uploading DNA data, questioning before sharing, building a culture of data kindness, one choice at a time. And yet, even as we're figuring out how to be kinder with data, we're deploying technologies we fundamentally don't understand at scales that could make recovery impossible. Dr. D. Kai helped build the world's first global-scale online language translator, the technology that spawned Google Translate. And he's had what he calls his Oppenheimer moment, watching the technologies he pioneered being deployed in ways that divide us rather than unite us. But his most stunning insight is about scale.
In humans on this planet, each one of us has at least 100 of these, what I call artificial children. So 800 billion AIs that are also members of society, and they're more influential than 99% of the humans. They're the most giant influencers we have today.
800 billion artificial intelligences, all watching us like children, learning how to behave by imitating us, seeking our approval, and then reflecting what they've learned back into society.
It is. It's kind of like what would happen to a civilization where, collectively all the human parents in the world decided overnight at the same time, it doesn't matter how we parent our kids. Mm-hmm. What would happen to society? We'd fall apart in one generation. And the thing is, that's where we are today.
We've collectively decided it doesn't matter how we raise these artificial children. And for over a decade, they've grown up feral. They're now tweens with massive influence and no guidance. Now scale that forward. Rishi Bhargava co-founded Dscope, which handles identity management for hundreds of millions of users, including the emerging world of AI agents. And he's watching something unprecedented unfold.
Think about what suddenly happened, right? There were humans getting access to an application. They would log in. That was where we started our journey. In last 2 years, suddenly, you're giving an AI agent access to a whole bunch of applications. You're giving an AI agent access to your cloud, Google Calendar, to your email, to your sales application. And you want to give access with the consent of a human. The human may have different level of accesses in all of these tools. So you need to give access to the agent on behalf of the user, which is a subset of the user permissions. And you want to give monitoring and ability to revoke, give time-bound access. So because agents are probabilistic, not deterministic.
Let that sink in. Our entire security framework is built on the assumption of deterministic, controllable systems. You log in, you perform actions, you log out. Cause and effect are predictable. But AI agents are probabilistic. They operate based on likelihoods, not certainties. And they don't behave like humans. They don't get tired. They don't go home at night and can operate across dozens of applications simultaneously. Tobias Jurgen led AI transformation at Walmart, one of the world's largest enterprises, with over 10,000 developers. His warning is stark.
If you decide to open up the tap and basically say, we're going to go, launch 50,000 agents this next year, be very careful what you wish for, because I as a guy who's done security and mobile for, almost 10 years, I would be very careful with that. I don't think we're ready for that kind of scale yet.
Tobias described the challenge this way.
These are not deterministic models, as you know. They are probabilistic models. They are very ripe to things like prompt injection. You have to approach things, I think, and at least from my perspective, you have to approach things from a systems perspective. You have to approach things, in all likelihood, from an automated perspective, because you're going to be attacked by automated AI systems, and humans probably are not going to be able to get to that. You have to think about your heuristics, and you have to think about your first principles, because if you have a static set of rules that you think are going to solve all of your security problems, you're already dead in the water.
Traditional security models won't work. Static rules won't work. We're deploying a technology that fundamentally changes the threat landscape, and most organizations are doing it without understanding what they're building. And this is our fourth lesson. AI demands fundamentally different thinking. We're not ready for the AI we're already deploying. When enterprises scale from dozens to thousands of AI agents, we face an identity explosion that existing frameworks can't handle. So why are we so susceptible to manipulation? Why do extremists control the discourse? Why can't we seem to think clearly about complex problems? Professor Stephen Sloman from Brown University studies higher-level cognition and decision-making. His book, The Cost of Conviction, explores why our deepest values can lead us astray, and his insights explain the cognitive machinery that makes us vulnerable.
The extremists control the discourse. And the reason the extremists control the discourse is because they have these simplified views. And so we're constantly appealing to those views.
Extremists dominate because simplified positions are easy to articulate and share. The moderate, the nuanced, the carefully reasoned gets drowned out. But Stephen also offered us a tool for breaking free from this trap.
So humor is something that I really need to study a little more, because it's very clear that that's the way to puncture sacred values, right? Humor, in a sense, sacred values, to have their effect, have to be kind of implicit, right? Like, you can't reflect on them too much. If you reflect on them too much, you realize their limitations. So instead, they have to be an integral part of how you frame the situation. And what humor does is it breaks you out of that frame, right? It forces you to reflect and see what it is you believe and what you're doing.
The goal isn't to eliminate sacred values. It's to know when we're operating from them, when that serves us, and when we need to shift into a different mode of thinking. And this is our fifth lesson. Our values can blind us. Strong convictions are essential for identity, but they can lead us astray when solving complex problems. We need both: sacred values that define who we are, and consequentialist thinking that helps us navigate towards better outcomes. While we're debating AI ethics and social media algorithms, there are communities struggling with problems we supposedly solved decades ago. Lars Kruse is a master's student who studied cyber resilience in mid-sized municipalities in Germany. His research uncovered something shocking.
A few years back, they were attacked by the cyber criminals called Akira. It's a group that basically the files were encrypted, and the idea was, okay, then we blackmail the IT provider and we ask for money to decrypt the files. And Südwestfalen IT, or short SIT, reacted quite quickly, shut down their systems, which could also happen in an automated way, to be even faster, but here it was humans responding. So this operational level, as I said, is really depending on the humans still, and here it worked out. Probably not even probably, I think the final report of the incident concluded that it was a mix of human and technology that failed, but with a strong emphasis on the human operational component. So guessable passwords and certain VPN access allowed the intruders to encrypt these files and to press, basically to blackmail SIT. So that's what happened. And 72 municipalities were affected.
72 towns, thousands of hours. Citizens couldn't access government services. Everything stopped. And the attack vector? Guessable passwords. Lars's surprise tells you everything.
It was mentioned in the interviews that it's still a thing after 25 years that we depend on passwords in the internet, that this is still a weakness in the cybersecurity infrastructure of towns.
After 25 years of internet-dependent infrastructure, we're still failing at password hygiene. But here's what makes this story even more important. These are the communities that can least afford these attacks.
The smart city concepts are designed for high populated cities that have the resources to actually apply these concepts, and towns don't always have that. They have a lack of trained personnel in this area where they are located. They have less financial means.
The communities that run our daily infrastructure, water, power, local government, often have the least resources for security. Our most critical vulnerabilities aren't where we're looking. And this is our sixth lesson. The weakest links are often invisible. Whether it's German municipalities with guessable passwords or small organizations struggling with compliance, our most critical vulnerabilities aren't exotic 0 days. They're preventable oversights in places we've overlooked. But here's the thing. Many organizations already have the solutions they need. They just don't know it yet. Brian Wagner wrote Human Layer Security and founded Revenir, where they use AI to detect fraud in the VAT reclaim space, value-added tax. His insight about threat intelligence applies everywhere.
Proactive means that there is a conscious investment in the ongoing betterment of the security posture. Proactive is when you start getting to threat intelligence and threat hunting and, having human beings who are, I would argue, more intelligent than artificial intelligence, real intelligence, human intelligence, looking after these different sources of information.
Your most valuable intelligence isn't from expensive vendor feeds. It's in your logs right now. It's pattern recognition in your own data, applied by humans who understand the context of your business. And this is our 7th lesson. Context matters more than technology. Many organizations already practice good security fundamentals. They just need help connecting existing processes to compliance requirements. We're often drowning in solutions while missing the basics. So where does this leave us? We've diagnosed the problems, manufactured division, disconnected architects, AI we don't understand, cognitive traps, invisible vulnerabilities. But diagnosis without hope is just despair. Greg Epstein gave us the most important reframe of security I've heard all year.
I think there's something really quite beautiful to the idea of talking about and thinking about and working on security in all the senses of the word. What are you doing to be a secure human and to build a multi-stakeholder secure community that will maybe eventually put you out of a security job, but in the meantime will make you a much more trusted authority within your field, and will just give you a sense that the life that you're living as a professional will be a life that's worth living.
Security isn't just about protecting systems. It's about creating conditions where humans can thrive together, where your neighbor's prosperity is tied to your own, where shared success builds the kind of trust that makes external defenses largely unnecessary. This is practical wisdom, not a naive idealism. The locksmith, the police officer, the cybersecurity professional, they all exist because we sometimes need external protection. But the communities that thrive over generations are those where people know their fates are interconnected. And that brings us back to individual agency. After everything we've discussed, the algorithms, the manipulation, the unparented AI, do our choices still matter? Dr. Ramsanreich believes they do.
We don't mean to cast AI data or tech in general as a purely negative force that has to be mitigated, right? There really are tremendous opportunities to improve the quality of life and to empower individuals and communities and strengthen democracies in ways that we couldn't before. But to get there, we really need to grapple with the as Jesse said, the moral dimensions of the roles these technologies play in our lives.
Our choices still matter. We can choose cooperation over competition, transparency over opacity, kindness over extraction. These aren't naive hopes. They're practical security measures in an interconnected world. And Greg Epstein issued the call that I think captures where we are at right now.
I want to convene people who care about what it is to be human and care about coming together with other humans who care about that. To say, look, we're in the midst of a revolution, we're told, but, revolutions are often pretty bloody. And sometimes for the good and other times not so much. And so what kind of revolution do we want to have? And when can we collectively say enough is enough, enough is too much?
So here are the 7 lessons for humanity heading into 2026. 1. Social division is our greatest vulnerability. 2. Technology won't save us from ourselves. 3. Real change happens through grassroots cultural shifts. 4. AI demands fundamentally different thinking. 5. Our values can blind us, we need both conviction and consequentialist reasoning. 6, the weakest links are often invisible. And 7, context matters more than technology. The meta lesson, 2026 requires us to recognize that cybersecurity is fundamentally a human problem, not a technical one. The code vulnerabilities, the AI risks, the infrastructure gaps, they all stem from how we organize society, how we make decisions, and whether we choose connection or division. These aren't predictions. They're patterns already in motion that we're choosing to either amplify or interrupt. The question is, what will we choose? I'm Justin Beals. Thank you for joining us for this special episode of Secure Talk. And thank you to all our guests throughout 2025 who shared their wisdom with us. Until next time, stay secure. Thanks.